Hello, 49er faithful. This is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and with me, this is Monday, which means I got my partner in crime, Rob Shue, with me today. How you doing, Rob?
Doing very well. Very excited to be talking about a new contract for Deebo Samuel.
Absolutely. That's the big news of the really broke last night, right? Right as I'm in the middle of packing for a move, it comes through, and I didn't see it until about an hour and a half later, so missed a little bit there, but real quick, before we get into that, though, I wanted to shout out some folks in the comment section. We have Peter says, let's do this. We have Jan in here. He says, will Deebo be pissed if he gets forward passes on end around instead of handoffs behind the quarterback? That's a good question. Actually, we're going to get to the reason why that could be the case in a little bit. Then we've got Amin the Dream says, hi, Jack and Rob. How you doing, Amin? And then the worst YouTuber ever says, what up, guys? Good day to be a Niner fan. There you go. There you go. Peter asked me where I'm moving. I'm going to be in the area still, just moving in with my girlfriend. So we're going to be doing that thing now. So getting stuff ready for that. Raphael 5629ers, who is a member of the Tool Shed, says, what's up, Jack, Rob, members of the Toolbox, and everyone else. That's right. It's Toolbox, not the Tool Shed. I get that one mixed up, and it's my own dang thing. But one last one. We've got Alan. He says, what's up, Jack and Rob? New 49er fan, might be on his way tonight or early tomorrow, probably. Ooh, that sounds good, Alan. Congratulations.
Yes.
It sounds like big time congratulations are in the works there for Alan. So best wishes and prayers up that everything goes smooth for you guys.
That's fantastic, Alan.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get back to it, though. We talked about, you mentioned already, Rob, the deal for Deebo Samuel. It was reported it's up to $73.5 million. It was reported in a couple different ways. It's $71.55 million over 3 years in new money and new years. $24.035 million signing bonus. And on top of that, there's going to be an option bonus that comes up next year for $9.215 million. So, and that's really guaranteed also. So in some ways, Deebo Samuel's signing bonus is actually closer to $33.3435 million is what his, I know the signing bonus and option bonus are different. The only reason those are really different is because the signing bonus hits this year, the option bonus will be next year. But those are pretty good numbers for Deebo Samuel. What do you think?
Very good numbers for Deebo Samuel. I mean, the way in which that bonus is laid out gives the illusion that DK Metcalf got the larger bonus up front. But in reality, when you look at total guaranteed bonus money, it edges out in Deebo's favor in that regard. And I think you have to look at those three characters together because you have Dandy representing all three in Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and AJ Brown. And so it feels relevant to really look at those three contracts together in combination with all of the deals that have been done for the wide receiver market, just resetting it. I found it to be fascinating that Deebo got a 3-year deal done in its totality, that it was, in fact, a 3-year deal and not, as the 49ers have done in the past with pretty much all of these big contracts, a 5-year deal. Were you surprised by the length of the term in the deal for Deebo?
Yes. That's if there was one thing that I was surprised about, it was the length of it. I was there, like you said, they typically try to go to that 5-year mark, which would have tied him up to the 49ers for 6 years in reality, with the contract this last year of his rookie contract still there. So I was a little surprised to see them go to 3. And that's also part of why, seeing him get a 20, the signing bonus that he did, 24.035, like we said, on that length of agreement was a little bit interesting. And I think that's also why you saw them use a void year at the end of it.
Yeah, you could certainly see a scenario wherein Deebo Samuel is able to negotiate his next big deal at the age of 29. Most of these deals are negotiated with 1 year remaining on the current contract. With 1 year left on this deal, Deebo is going to be 29, headed into potential free agency at age 30. This strikes me as a concession by the San Francisco 49ers to agree to a shorter term deal. It gives Deebo some of that flexibility, which, as a member of the 49er faithful, leaves me a little bit skeptical as to whether Deebo's next deal will in fact be signed with San Francisco or potentially somewhere else. At a bare minimum, it gives him a shot to earn one more big contract, because as a player that came out a little bit older in the draft, it was risky. If he had signed a 5-year deal this time around, he might not have qualified for another big deal.
Sure. No, that's definitely a part of it. The other thing I think too, when you look at the way that this deal is structured overall, it's a short-term deal, and like you said, he's going to be able to hit free agency again after the year where he's 29. But also when you look at the structure of it, the way the cap hit explodes up in 2024, that kind of goes with the salary cap going up. But I think it also lends to the fact that there might be some restructuring going on around 2024 with him prior to the final year of his contract coming up again, doing another extension, getting more signing bonus money, those types of things. That would be the reason why he'd want to do it then. And the 49ers can kind of lower his cap hit again as Trey Lance's contracts come in online and things like that. So I can see if everything works out well with Deebo Samuel and he's healthy and he gets through these 4 seasons and he's the guy that everybody expects him to be, the 49ers could get a nice contract for him actually after year 3, which would be leave him with 1 year remaining on the deal.
Yeah, and honestly, with a player that has dealt with some injury history, I don't think from a team perspective it's all that bad to be committed to a 3-year deal, a 3-year extension for Deebo Samuel. And the reality is for many of these 5-year deals, especially with their lucrative year 4, year 5 contractual numbers, those deals are bound to get renegotiated at some point anyway. So the framework for that renegotiation already exists in those longer contracts, which may make it easier to keep that player on the respective team. For Deebo, it may come down to another social media standoff. There could be more posturing as far as not wanting to be in San Francisco. I could view it from both sides on this one. I don't think it's unfortunate for the team. And we could get to another standoff wherein Deebo says, no, I was serious in not wanting to remain in San Francisco long term. I agreed to a shorter deal because I knew it would give me the opportunity to hit free agency yet again.
Yeah, it can go all kinds of different ways. It's a really interesting contract. I think the thing for me, I was one of those who never really felt like this wasn't going to happen. If you go through the shows that we've done together and the shows, especially I've mentioned it on Twitter a little bit, but I was more in the writing at the Press Democrat and then on my YouTube channel with believing that this is going to get done, not really getting all up in arms about whether it was the social media scrubbing or, the usage standpoint or this and that, and Deebo's pissed because look he's out at dance club and he's telling them to stop with one thing or another. It's so the way that this whole season played out. Hey, at least I feel like I was a little bit on the right side there. But I gotta hit this though real quick. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that what I just said with the usage being a big piece of this whole puzzle. It's crazy that when you look at his numbers, the only incentives that are tied for Deebo Samuel's contract moving forward all revolve around rushing. He either needs to run for 380 yards or more or score 3 touchdowns in a season to start to hit his incentives. The bigger incentive is actually his rushing yards. If he can get 380 plus rushing yards in a season, that nets him an extra $650K. If he does that for 3 years, that's the 1.95 that gets him up to that 73.5 million that we heard originally from Ian Rappaport, because he's the one that reported that's the max would be 73.5, and that's the reason. It's all running stuff with Deebo, and all we heard all season was how he was upset about his usage.
Yeah, this sends a signal that Deebo is willing to be used as a running back and that he knows in being used that way, he should be compensated as such, because it could play into his next contract. If he gets a bunch of wear and tear as a running back, you could assume that the 49ers or whatever team is negotiating with him next uses that against him. This does signify that he is willing to continue as that wide back, and 380 yards to trigger the larger of the two bonuses would seem to be a very manageable number. I would expect Deebo to absolutely hit that trigger in 3 out of the 4 upcoming years.
Yeah, I would too. I can see that happening with Deebo Samuel as well. It makes too much sense for the 49ers to continue to use them, and it just goes to show kind of the way that this whole offseason went. There were just so many different reports back and forth and everything, and I just kept telling everybody, settle down, relax. It's all about the money. That's what it's all about. It's all about the money. Like, it's all about this at the end of the day. and his contract, the negotiation with Deebo Samuel was very much in line with what we saw with George Kittle, more so than Fred Warner.
And I always thought that it would be the fully guaranteed money that Deebo was after, and it appears, I mean, certainly out of those contracts for the other clients of Dandy, I mean, he worked out with the greatest fully guaranteed amount, $41 million fully guaranteed for Deebo over those 3 years. It was only $31 fully guaranteed over 3 years for DK Metcalf, and for AJ Brown, $40 million fully guaranteed, but over a 4-year deal. So Deebo gets that shorter deal and the most fully guaranteed. And if you count both of the bonuses paid out this year and next year, he gets more upfront in bonuses than DK Metcalf did, although DK gets all of that in year 1.
Yeah, no, it's a really good deal. It's right around the number I think that everybody was that a lot of people were expecting it to be, overall the numbers that he received, and it works out really good. And it's a 4-year deal. They have a couple, they have 1 or 2 void years at the back end of that to kind of help lower the hit of the signing bonus and the option bonus. That's why you have those void years in there. But that all can be worked out with an extension. I would think that if he's doing what they expect, that there's going to be an extension down the road for Deebo if he's staying healthy. So keep an eye on that as we move forward. It's good news. That was great news for the 49er fans yesterday. Great news for the 49ers in general, because he is a big piece of the offense, especially if you've watched them over the first 5 days of training camp. So you've noticed that over those first 5 days, I wasn't up there today, but the first 4 I was there for three of the practices of 4, and the 3 practices I was in attendance to. There was definitely they were missing Deebo Samuel, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I love how creative this was in keeping the cap hits low for the first couple of years, coinciding the larger cap hits with the increase in the salary cap, the anticipated increase in the salary cap. And it doesn't seem untenable. It doesn't feel like one of those deals wherein if you got to year 3 or year 4 in it, that you couldn't pay Deebo that amount per year. It feels reasonable to compensate him in years 3 and 4 in the way in which this deal is laid out, although it is set up, as you mentioned, to be ideally renegotiated at some point and extended, so long as Deebo does want to stay in San Francisco, or at least is open to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's get into the first, the beginning of training camp a little bit. I know we were going to go through. It's been I'll just start us off. It's been an interesting ride so far for Trey Lance, that's for sure. And if I was if you asked me what the 49ers offenses look like so far, I would say the 49ers offense has the rhythm of Elaine Bennis.
Oh no, that's some real dancing going on there.
Yeah, no, it's been very inconsistent. There hasn't really been any rhythm at all. There's definitely been some highlight reel plays for sure. It's been a lot of big plays and a lot of bad plays, kind of all mixed together.
And that was for the offense as a whole. Is it a fairly similar take on Trey Lance and how he has looked from the start of camp up until where we are now?
Yeah, especially with Trey Lance. He's 28 to 58 right now. 2 touchdown passes that he both threw today. Those were today during red zone drills. Threw an interception down in the area of the field today. He ran one in though, but under 50% in team drills is not good. I understand that they're working against a really good defense and everything that goes along with it, but it's been a real struggle for the 49ers offense and Trey Lance in particular. And some of those incompletions obviously are pass breakups and drops. There's only been a few drops, and there's been a number of pass breakups. But there's been some really bad throws on him. We see the real throws, but there's also been some just really bad throws as well.
And when you look at it from a perspective of, well, this is the offense starting and stopping, not looking cohesive at this point, versus this defense is elite, they seem to be making plays on a regular basis. What's the split there for you? Is it more of the offense not looking like they are in cohesion, or is the defense as good as we might hope?
It's a pretty, it's a decent balance between the two, but the 28 to 58, some of that is on Trey Lance. There's open receivers that he's missing. So, like for example, this was, I think, on day 2. He's got an out route to Brandon Ayuk, who's open on an out route, open by NFL standards,
Right.
and just airmails it over, up and behind him, not even close. And then the very next play, they run a little in route to Jawan Jennings, and he's wide open underneath. It should be a simple pitch and catch, and the ball's not even close to him. It's way behind him. So those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. And you'll see him have those throws, and then you see the throw like what he threw to George Kittle down the sideline on the deep route, or the deep throw to Brandon Ayuk, which was a beautiful throw. He also had a really nice, he has nice plays, but it's almost like for every really nice play, there's a clunker that follows it.
And do you anticipate that this is something that I would guess some portion of 49ers fans will think about until Jimmy Garoppolo isn't on the roster? But is your impression that is there anything that could happen within camp wherein Trey Lance's performance could dictate that the 49ers say to themselves, you know what, we'll just keep Jimmy around as a backup if we can? Do you think that they are evaluating to that level at this point, or have they firmly committed and they're patient, much like I am at this point with Trey Lance's progression?
They're committed to Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo, everything that they've said publicly, they're committed to Trey Lance, and they're committed to moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. Whether that's the right move or not, we'll see as the season plays out, but that definitely seems the direction that they're going to be taking.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. It feels a little bit late to reverse course at this point and go back to Jimmy Garoppolo. That would signal that you are, in fact, pulling the ripcord on the backup shoot, and would be panic amongst 49er faithful at this point, I would imagine. Are you getting a sense? I'm seeing this throughout a couple of different sources, and it's been asked of Coach Shanahan. It's something that I have said about this roster, but are you sensing a team of destiny at this point at all? Are you getting a sense that the team believes they have a very deep roster, that they are a capable team, one that's capable of making it to the promised land this year?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positivity around the team. I think the team feels very good about what they're going to be able to do. I think they believe in Trey as well, and Trey Lance. I think this is a team that feels like it can get to the Super Bowl, make a deep run in January, and be playing the first week of February.
I mean, it seems like a special one. Players keep talking about it in that regard, and yet there are some camp battles going on that would at least give me pause right now. What are those for you that have been the most fun to watch? What are the camp battles wherein you came in thinking there was going to be a competition, and lo and behold, here we are a week into camp, and it is knee deep in competition to where it's not settled at this point? What are those battles that you feel like could still be undecided?
Well, the offensive line is completely unsettled in the middle at center and right guard. I think that's partly why part of why you're seeing the inconsistency from the offense, is because they are rotating offensive linemen on a regular basis. So, and when I'm saying rotating, it's not like they're rotating them one play to the next, but they'll run one series with Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey at tackle, Spencer Burford at right guard, and so on, and Jake Brendel at center, and then they'll come back out the next time, and they'll go with just depends on what they're doing that day. So like on Saturday, it would be Jalen Moore at left tackle and Colton McKivitz out at right tackle. And they're putting in Keaton Sutherland at right guard, along with next to Brunskill. So even that first offensive line, there's a lot of rotation amongst that group, and you're seeing a lot of rotation even with their backups in there. So it's interesting.
Does the rotation and the way in which it's currently happening, does it lead you to believe that the least settled position is the center position? That seems to be where the most regular rotation is going on there between you have Jake Brendel and Daniel Brunskill seeming to rotate, but in the ones.
Yeah, I think, along the offensive line, yes, that's the unsettled position is center, because whatever happens at center is going to determine what happens at right guard. Everywhere else, I think, they're set with Williams and McGlinchey. McGlinchey's looked really good in the 2 days that he's been back. I wasn't there today, but I've heard that he was looking good today, and he was looking good he had a couple of really nice reps against Nick Bosa on Saturday, one-on-one during team period. And then So it just depends on what happens at center. It's if Brunskill wins that job, then probably going to be Spencer Burford at right guard. And if it's Brendel, I think they at some point put Brunskill back over at right guard. They're allowing those two to compete, and if Brunskill doesn't get it done, he's going to become the right guard for the team.
So that Brunskill could be in competition for either position. If he's not in competition for center, he will be in competition for right guard. But if he wins the center position, you think that might actually lock in Burford as a right guard as well?
Yeah, that's when. Yeah, it's either going to be Burford or Jalen Moore, and I think they really like what they're seeing right now in Spencer Burford. Regardless, the one cool thing about it, I think, if you're a 49er fan and you're hearing about the struggles of the offensive line, I think take it into a little bit of consideration how much rotation they're doing right now, getting all these guys reps. You should take it as a positive that guys like Brendel and Brunskill and Jalen Moore and Spencer Burford, Colton McKivitz, and the guys who are expected to be probably their top offensive guys that make the roster are getting a lot of reps right now. And they're getting reps with the first group against the first defense. And it's a positive for the team.
Are there any surprises for you so far in the players that are getting reps in that rotation?
The only surprise that I had was the Brendel. The Jake Brendel and Daniel Brunskill thing. It was something that I had talked about with you a couple of times, that if this happens, it's going to kind of cause a little bit of chaos along the offensive line. And then, we found that out the first day of camp when Kyle Shanahan said that before practice, that that's what they were going to do, that there was going to be a competition there. So that was my big surprise along that group. But as far as the performance from that unit, it's been kind of what I've expected. It didn't surprise me on Saturday that the offensive line looked better once they had Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey bookending that.
In having Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey at the tackle spots, does that make you comfortable enough with what the floor will be for this offensive line once it is complete?
Yeah, I think so. I think they look good on Saturday. I wasn't there today, but on Saturday they looked much improved to where Lance was able to have more time in the pocket. He was only 8 of 15, but he had a couple of drops on that day. And then because of the protection around him, he was able to do a good job of moving around in the pocket. It wasn't like it was just collapsing on him. It allowed them actually at times the pocket going around him, and he was able to step up and through it. And one time took off running. Another time he bought it some time and threw it. Both times, though, did a good job of keeping his eyes down the field. So it looked good. It looked good on Saturday, and we'll see what it looks like tomorrow when I'm there.
How has Lance responded to some of that pressure that our defense has been able to generate in his face with this seeming lack of cohesion along the offensive line and the advantage going towards the defense? Has Lance responded well? Has he looked mobile in those circumstances?
Oh yeah, he's looked really good. Like I said we've seen him in practice now with the pressure around him. He had some really good scrambles. I believe would have been Thursday. Had a couple of really nice scrambles on Thursday. We saw, like I said, on Saturday, he was moving around in the pocket really good. He had one where, like I said, he stepped up and he kept his eyes down the field, and he didn't just take off right away. He stepped up, kind of threw the pressure, looked downfield, and then nothing was there, and he took off. And then another one where the pressure was around him. He stepped up, slid over to his right instead of taking off, kind of just slid out to his right and hit Brandon Ayuk over the middle. So his footwork looks good. He's looked really good in terms of that. It's just a little bit of inconsistency with his arm accuracy at times. But we'll see. It's early in camp, and I think he can keep improving as this thing goes through.
Yeah, absolutely. And in laying down a wager on this one, who did you start with as the favorite to claim that center position? And does that remain unchanged, or do you have a new favorite now?
Well, I thought that the best thing for the 49ers prior to training camp was to go with Jake Brendel at center so that they could keep Daniel Brunskill at right guard.
Right.
Even though I'm a believer in Spencer Burford, I really liked what I saw out of him during going back to rookie minicamp and then through OTAs. It never stopped kind of improving to me. So I'm not shocked to see him doing as well as he is at right guard or getting those snaps. It seems like it's trending to me that it's going to be Daniel Brunskill. We'll see how that plays out over this week. But the fact that they're still rotating those two in tells me that competition is alive and well. And we'll see if Brunskill starts to get more reps or not. If you see the reps kind of start leaning his way, I think we'll know which direction this battle is leaning.
That seems like a fair observation, including the fact that Brunskill was still dealing with some lingering knee soreness, as reported by Matt Mayoko and Jennifer Lee Chan in OTAs and minicamp. So you would assume that he will continue to round back into health. And if he started out behind Brendel, may in fact surpass him in those center spots. And that would be interesting, as it does keep Burford, who seems to have a higher potential ceiling at that right guard spot. When you look at some of the rest of the camp battles that everyone was excited about, how are they playing out? When you observe the strong safety position, sure seemed like Talanoa Hufanga came in as the clear favorite. I've heard good things so far. Is that continuing, trending in a positive direction for Huff holding down that spot as strong safety?
Yeah, he's looked really good. He's like, he's looked like the guy I kind of expected him to, the kind of, he's back there. He's playing with Jimmy Ward. You can tell that the two of them have a really good relationship. They're talking to each other constantly, whether it's on the field or on the sidelines. They're next to each other, just talking about everything that's going on. And for the most part, Talanoa Hufanga's looked really good. And I think he's going to be the starter. But Tavarius Moore had a couple of really nice plays on Saturday as well. One interception off of a tip that he was able to dive in and pick it off, but the other one was a really nice one. Kind of shows that it showed that his Achilles is healed up, and that was a deep ball down the middle. I think it was from Nate Sudfeld that kind of hung up in the air, and he was able to go up high and snag it for an interception. So they're deep right there, and I think Hufanga's got the edge, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Tavarius Moore getting some of the reps similar to what we saw last year with Talanoa Hufanga when you had Ward and Tart healthy.
And the 49ers do on occasion use those three safety sets. You could certainly see a scenario wherein both are on the field. It feels like different skill sets. I'm pleased to hear that Moore has regained some of that athleticism. That certainly was the concern in coming off of an Achilles tear for someone whose skill set is listed as an athletic type. It's good to see him making some of those plays again. Would you expect that the 49ers might keep, when you look at safeties, do you see this as a scenario wherein the 49ers just keep four and you're looking at basically locked already with Talanoa Hufanga, Jimmy Ward, George Odom, obviously contributing on special teams. And then if Tavarius Moore is recovered, him primarily serving as that third backup safety?
Yeah, I think they'll keep four. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with the slot corner, nickelback, what happens there, because it's primarily been Darquez Denard with the ones. On Saturday, they had Dante Johnson running with the ones. So they're kind of mixing and matching. Kyle Shanahan also talked about the need for your slot to be versatile, or all those the cornerbacks that make your roster be able to be versatile more than anything, because you only can have 5 of those guys up on the game day. So having them be able to do multiple things is helpful. And he talked about how, like with K'Wan Williams, he was limited to only playing nickel, couldn't play on the outside. So that's where a guy like Dante Johnson would make sense, though, because he's shown the ability to play in the nickel. He's shown the ability to play outside a little bit, not as well, but he's okay out there. And he's shown the ability to play safety. So he gives you a guy that can play all the spots if he's on your roster.
Dante Johnson comes to mind as one of those players that's going to be fascinating to watch as we cut down to the 53-man roster. I mean, the 49ers are going to have to decide between players who have potentially greater upside at a single position, most likely, or someone like Dante Johnson, who has the ability to play fluently in several different spots. I wonder if the 49ers will view him as someone who you can cut and most likely bring back, right? That he's not a player other teams might covet at the same level the 49ers do, but he has extreme value to the 49ers. Do you see him as someone they'd be unwilling to risk losing this far into his career?
That's where the question comes up, right? Because they were able to do that with him last year. Has his value around the league changed a lot much? He's an older player. He's already, I think, 30. He's been around for forever. Came in with Jimmy Ward, I believe, in that draft class. So he's been around the block quite a few times with them. But he's there's just something about him. He's not the best at anything, but he's really good at a lot of things, and that is enough with what else they have around him on the 49ers defense.
You mentioned him getting some reps at the nickel cornerback spot. That's another obvious camp battle that we're keeping our eye on. Other than Darqueze Dennard and Dante Johnson coming in, who else has been playing in that spot? And do you still see Darqueze Dennard as the most likely to continue holding that down?
It's been Darqueze Dennard for the most part doing the running with the first team unit when the first guy off the bench. They've also had Sam Womack in there as well.
Right.
Those are the top two. Deommodore Lenoir a little bit here and there, but not as much. So if I was, without knowing it, if I was to say what our depth chart looks like, I think at that spot right now, I think it's Dennard, Womack, and Dante Johnson. I would guess.
With you would assume every chance for Sam Womack to still come in and lay claim to that spot if he continues to progress throughout training camp. Would you still list that as one of the very open camp battles at this point?
Oh, for sure. I don't think they're settled there at all. Guys like Dennard and Johnson, they can kind of work in that slot area because, like how Shanahan said on Saturday morning there, when he was asked about it, it takes a lot of speed to play on the edge as a corner. But when you play in the slot, you don't have to be quite as fast because there's more things you can do with leverage because of the way the rest of the defense where everybody else is. So you can kind of leverage in order to, in one way or another, to help, take away the fact that you're a little bit slower. So that's why those guys work well in there. Whereas, a guy like Sam Womack with his speed, he can line up all over the place and make plays.
Now, another position that I've had my eye on that seems to play out in the 49ers' favor because of a bit of recovery news is the tight end 2 position, right? Charlie Warner came in having held that down at the tail end of last season, but then had core muscle surgery and has missed time. As far as I'm hearing, it seems Ross Dwelley has still been getting the primary reps at the tight end 2 position, but that seems like one that could be wide open in camp, both for the second and third position on the roster. What have you seen from those other guys competing at tight end? Anyone jump off the page as warranting a roster spot as of yet?
I think both Croft and Fumagalli, the 2 new tight ends that they brought in, are pushing everybody on that roster. Jordan Matthews as well. It seems like every practice he's making a big play down the field. Here's the thing though, when it comes to Jordan Matthews, Jordan Matthews is a guy who was a second-round draft pick as a wide receiver. He's an extremely talented route runner. Still has a lot of that speed and ability, obviously, that got him drafted as high as he did. And so when you're running against the backups and the third string offensive line, you're going to get open a little bit more, especially when you're as talented as he is. So I think that might be partly why we've seen him make so many big plays. It's because of the competition that he's going up against. He's not playing against the ones. Sometimes he's not even playing against the 2s. So I think that could be part of why we're seeing him excel so much. But I really like Jordan Matthews as well. I think he'd be the 49ers have wanted to have a wide out type of guy as their second tight end over the last couple of years with the moves that they've made there. And so Matthews makes a lot of sense. I just don't know if he fits their needs as a blocker enough.
Right. That would be the area where he'd need to improve, but it certainly is something the 49ers have chased. I mean, you look at them bringing in Jordan Reed. They have wanted to bring in a capable second tight end, and it would seem from a pass catching perspective, Jordan Matthews might be that guy. Did seem as if he got a little dinged up today. Hopefully that isn't serious there. We touched on the nickel cornerback position. That's certainly one. Running back is another where it seems like it could be wide open in who ends up getting the most carries, but certainly in the tail end of the roster in filling out that what I would assume to be the fourth and final running back spot dedicated to the halfback position. Have you seen anything from any of those players on the bubble there, whether it's Jeff Wilson Jr., JaMychal Hasty, or Jordan Mason, now that we're in camp, anything that changes your belief as to a placement there on the roster?
Well, Jeff Wilson Jr. had looked really good in the first four practices. Like I said, I wasn't up there today, so he didn't practice today either. So I'm not sure if he's dinged up a little bit or if it was just a scheduled day off. We'll see tomorrow if he's out there or not, but he looked really explosive over the first 4 days of camp. He looked really good. Much more he's healthy. Last year at this point, he was dealing with that knee injury, and I think that slowed him down, and it caused him some issues throughout the season. This year, he was able to work through that all off season, and he's been healthy, and he's looked very explosive. And Davis Price looked good as well. And I heard Jordan Mason showed out today, which doesn't surprise me.
What is your opinion on Elijah Mitchell as a pass catching back?
That's a great question, because that's the area when he was asked about it, that's what he said he really worked on was his hands. So we'll see how that works out. I heard he made a couple of nice plays today as a receiver. I think it was during one-on-ones and stuff like that. So if he can bring that aspect of the game onto the field, I think that's a big piece for him. Day one, he had a really nice play where it was in 7-on-7s. Lance, you could see Lance go 1, 2, and then finally comes back to Mitchell late as the check down, and he's able to hit him in the flat and stride, and Mitchell's going up the field for a nice gain. So it's there for him. We'll see how it plays out.
That would be interesting to me, because it would seem to lessen the need to keep a JaMycal Hasty or Jeff Wilson Jr. on the roster if you're getting that from Elijah Mitchell. It might free up the ability to go with the younger back as that fourth backer, as opposed to keeping someone. It did seem that the 49ers used JaMycal Hasty primarily in that third down back role last year, and that seemed to fit for a twitchier player like him. Jeff Wilson Jr. also has strong hands, but again, if you're getting that from one of your lead backs, maybe you feel like you can take a little bit of a risk at the tail end of the roster. Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just going to say the wide receiver room is another one that's fascinating to me. And now that you have Deebo back out there, contract is done. Top three feel really set. But if you had to give the edge for who accrues the greatest number of stats throughout this season, who do you think it is as that wide receiver for? Do you think it's Danny Gray or Ray McLeod, who is involved more in this offense their first year with the Niners?
Ray McLeod. Danny Gray can't get off the line of scrimmage and can't get open. He doesn't. We know that he's supposed to be the speed guy, and every time they sent him deep, didn't matter whether it was Diameter Lenore. Diameter Lenore was running step for step for him. I was going to say Travarius Ward, but Travarius Ward's covered up everybody, so that's a bad one. But even when he was matched up 1-on-1, against Diameter Lenore. Try to say that name fast 3 times.
It is a tough one.
Lenore was able to run with him and be right on his hip, and it was for interception. And we haven't seen him really make a big play yet.
You can always tell the tough names like that because they for sure get shortened. Demo, right, is the nickname for Diameter Lenore amongst his teammates there. And I can understand that because Demo is a hell of a lot easier to pronounce than Diameter Lenore, especially when saying it repeatedly. Well, absolutely. That is, I suppose that's not a huge shocker, a little bit of a disappointment, but a critique that was there with Danny Gray, a question mark, I should say, that was there with Danny Gray coming out, a question mark that's there with a lot of the smaller, speedier wide receivers in the NFL. Can they get off the line? In speaking about the line in a more positive way in regards to a draft pick, I've been reading good things about Drake coming in. And so what have you been seeing? What have you been hearing about the second round draft pick on that edge in Drake Jackson?
Yeah, right. Drake Jackson, the guy that I was ripping, after OTAs and minicamp, right? Saying how he didn't look like he was in real, he looked like he was really good in individual drills, but then when they got to the team period, he kind of disappeared. No, he's shown up really well during camp. He had one rep, I think it was just in school. He just blew around him early on in camp, and it would have been a sack during team drills easily if it had been had the opportunity, right? So it was he's looked better. We've seen him. I've noticed an improvement out of him. I think the off season, getting away from the team for a month and a half, I think might have helped get him right, and now he's ready to go. It seems like.
With what he'd be asked to do within the 49ers defense, what do you think we would need to see from Drake Jackson through the remainder of training camp in order to earn some heavier type of a rotational piece within this defense, in order to earn the snaps that would be necessary to start accruing significant sacks this season?
I think he just needs to keep showing that he can win, right? You've got as a edge pass rusher, you need to be able to show the ability to get around them and also be able to set the edge in the run game and those types of things too. So I think he just needs to become a little bit more consistent with both of those, and he's definitely trending on that pattern right now.
Yeah, it seems as if we are getting positive reports so far, and it is early on in camp. You could certainly see a situation wherein he continues to make strides. In speaking about the defensive line in its totality, what would you say about this unit? Are you impressed in the visual aspect the same way that you would be when you look at this unit on paper? Because on paper, it seems freaking phenomenal.
Well, you get Nick Bosa and Samson Ebicom and Eric Armstead on the field. Those three are studs, and they make whoever else that fourth guy is a better. Javon Kinlaw, we really haven't seen much of him yet. He's been out there. He looked okay on Saturday when he was in there, but he only was a part of the first half of the team reps, and then he sat out after, and then he wasn't there for practice today. But they've looked really good. The defensive line's great. I usually don't say great a whole lot, but this defensive line, I think, has the ability to get there. And, Matt, in the comment section here, he says that the really bad O-line makes us overrate our D-line. Last year was the same narrative. We had top D-line, but some games they really struggled to get pressure. I think the thing is this defensive line with Nick Bosa on the field is going to be a top level D-line. They were very good over the second half of the season with Bosa and Ebicom on the field, with Armstead inside. Once they moved Eric Armstead inside, the rest of the defensive line took off because Armstead's just a better interior defensive lineman, I think.
Yeah, I would think unless Javon Kinlaw is unable to stay on the field, that this unit is a very talented one at a bare minimum, and potentially one of the most elite in the league at a ceiling. Yeah,
they're going to be a really good defense. Even if Javon Kinlaw isn't out there, I think they have the depth. They have a lot of guys. They just added another one today. So that have been in the league for a long time and are professionals and those types of things. They don't have very many guys that are in that group that you don't know anything about them. It's just a matter of, that they're professional defensive linemen, and then you have a really good defensive line coach in Chris Kasarik who kind of can bring the best out of these guys. I think they're going to be fine with what they have.
A lot of would-be starters on that unit were they on any other team. All right, so I do want to get your take on a player that you thought coming in was going to have a great camp, was going to be a starter, was going to contribute in some way, and for whatever reason, to this point in camp, has been a disappointment to you. Who's been the most disappointing player so far relative to your expectations?
That's a tough one. I think if you're going to say relative to the expectations with how I thought they were going to play, I'm going to say Trey Lance.
I thought it might go that direction.
In terms of the starters, because I felt like Lance was going to be further along. I know that there's some issues with the pass protection in front of him and those types of things, but I think that the inconsistent, what I've seen from him so far is very much the same guy that I saw last year, meaning really good for a few plays, not so good for some more plays, really good for some plays, not so good for the next. And that's what I've seen so far. And it's not all the offensive line. I understand the offensive line has some issues, but it's not the things that I'm talking about with Lance aren't due to the offensive line.
And just to clarify, would you say that in your opinion, it's still early enough in camp that these things can be rectified and you might get to a place where you say, oh, that was great improvement throughout camp. I expect this to be a very solid season.
For sure. Well, and I do think it's going to be a solid season. I just think it's been a slow start to camp for him a little bit. I think Deebo Samuel not being there has been a part of it. And we'll see if it takes off a little bit as they go through. So that's one. I think the other one would be the interior offensive line play, meaning the center position, whether it's Jake Brendel or Daniel Brunskill. I think between the center and the right guard, it's been a little bit more of a struggle than I was thinking it was going to be.
That makes sense. And it sure has seemed like there's still a question mark there. I mean, fans are still talking about J.C. Tretter at this point, and probably will be until he gets signed by someone and is no longer available. Flipping the script on that, who's someone that you didn't expect to be wowed by or had reasonable expectations for, but just has been the most intriguing player to this point in camp? Who do you have your eye on the most?
I think the most intriguing player so far in camp has been Emmanuel Mosley and Travarius Ward, and with the jobs that they've been doing on the edge. I mean, we all knew that the big money went to Travarius Ward, but we didn't see them during OTA. We didn't really get to see him much during OTAs and minicamp. He pretty much stayed out of it. So seeing those two on the field and what they've been able to do, I think that they've definitely stepped up and surprised me.
That one sounds like a great pairing. I mean, you look at the depth at cornerback now with the potential to maybe start the year with Jason Verrett still on one of the lists that keep him off of the 53-man roster, bring him back as, you know, a added benefit later on in the season, if in fact he is needed. But you look at two potential lockdown corners out there for the 49ers. It is pretty exciting when I start hearing about, in combination with one of the most fascinating pass rushes in the league, hearing about a cornerback tandem that could also be one of the best in the league, because that combines to be an elite defensive unit. If you have one of the best defense pass rushes and one of the best pass defenders.
Yeah. And, you know, it's been the defense has been really good. So when we're talking about the stuff with Trey Lance, obviously that has to be taken into account for it a little bit. There are times when he's going to the right spot, but here's the thing. Here's where I take a step back is when you have multiple interceptions that look exactly the same. You're dropping back and you have a guy running over across the middle and you don't see the defender and you throw the ball right into his chest. That's bad. And I've seen him do that at least twice. You know, I didn't see the interception today, and then I heard the interception that he threw on Friday on the throw to George Kittle. From what the reports are, and then also hearing how Kyle Shanahan described it, it sounded like that was a mistake on George Kittle's part more than the quarterback.
Well, it sounds as if, you know, there are going to be some ups and downs. That's what I predicted as far as Trey Lance, but the rest of the team is phenomenal. You hear Kyle Shanahan and a lot of the beat reporters talking about this roster being one of the deepest out there. We touched on that earlier in this show. I certainly believe this is one of, if not the deepest rosters that we have seen on the 49ers underneath Kyle Shanahan. So even if we see struggles from Trey Lance, I anticipate that this team will be able to make a deep run simply because of how talented the entire roster is.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's definitely is a very talented roster. We've talked about that. I think this is an extremely deep team, a lot of talent all across the defense and across the offense. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And one of the things too is we haven't seen them do a move the ball drill yet. It's all been, you know, we're putting the ball here and it's either first or second or third down, but they're not trying to drive the ball down the field and see if they can put a drive together. So all this up and down, it's all part of their plan of just basically they're just putting the offense in and they're just running plays. They're not trying to necessarily do a whole lot other than, like, you know, the red zone situation they ran today. So we're seeing that a little bit more. So maybe we'll see I would expect to see some move the ball periods this week. And I think that's going to give us a better insight of how this offense is performing with Trey Lance than, you know, kind of what we've seen up to this point. And like I said, I'm disappointed in it because I was expecting him to be closer to 60 or 65% completion. He's made some really nice plays. So don't get me wrong. He's made he's done what I've expected from the explosive play standpoint. He's done some nice things with his legs from that standpoint. I just want to see him be consistent. I want to see more consistency out of him. And maybe we'll see that as they start to get through camp and they start to do more of the, you know, what looks like regular football. And I mean, like move the ball stuff or, you know, 2-minute drills and things like that.
That would make sense that he would begin to find his rhythm in those drills, wherein it's a more natural type of an environment for a quarterback to operate in, much more a game type environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when, you know, the big thing with there is you just start to have a flow to the offense, right? It's first down. That's what we're going to do here. Second down. Okay. Now we got a first down. Good. Now we're back to first down, you know, third and short, you know, those kind of things. Just how do you move the ball down the field? And last year in training camp, it wasn't all that pretty. And I think that was part of the difference between who the starter was and who the backup was the way those move the ball periods went. This year, we don't have the competition for the starting quarterback, but just for the overall offense to see how it flows. It's going to be important to see that come up.
Well, I'm looking forward to the remainder of the training camp practices. And hopefully when we get out to Minnesota, that's just going to be the difference, not playing against the most elite defense in the NFL. That'll be the difference for Lance, I'm sure.
Yeah, or the first preseason game coming up against the Packers on the 12th, right?
Yes.
We can see that even then. So we'll see how it goes. really quick before we had a super chat from Big Time. Says, hope to see you all back with Grant. Thank you very much. We'll see how that works out. And then Rob, I know kind of in wrapping this up, you have a show coming up in a few minutes, right?
I do. 5 o'clock. Got Rohan coming on. Very excited to have that guest who has been covering the practices as well. So going to be breaking down today's practice and everything that has been going on as well, getting his takes.
Absolutely. So that'll be fun because I know Rohan's been there and I've seen his stuff on Twitter. So I haven't had a chance to connect with him on YouTube yet, but I know he'd reached out to me. So it's something I've got to do. And right now things are crazy with between camp, and I'll be up there all this week from now on. I'll be up there. The only day that they don't have practice is Thursday, but every day other than Thursday, I'll be up there there won't be another practice this week that I miss. So
very nice.
Keep it locked on. I'm going to be at most of them for the rest of the way. So I won't be in Minnesota, but everything else will be. So I want to take a second. Thank you, Rob, for coming on. Fantastic. And good luck with your show coming up here in a few minutes with Rohan.
I appreciate that, Jack.
Thank you to everybody over in the comment section. Do me a favor. Make sure you check out Rob's show that's coming up and give him a like and subscribe as well. But before you do that, subscribe to mine. Hit that like button. Get over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Make that a favorite on your web browser. And then also, when you're here, before you leave, hit that little bell notification so you know when we're going live all the time without missing it. Other than that, again, Rob, thank you. Thanks to all the fans. Have a great rest of your Monday. Be back tomorrow with a breakdown from camp. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.